So, Matt was well here. I'm the commissioner of the Florida Grid League. This is the first of a series of videos where we uncover some of the black leaders within our own community, some of the challenges, stories that they've had, also the accomplishments, and really take inspiration from what they've done and what we can do to apply that into our own lives. So, welcome, Matt. Matt Hornaday. And Matt, about 3 years ago, came from a manager position at Office Depot. Within the first 6 months of being a realtor, came number 2 in his office. Since then, he moved up to the number 1 spot and has been number 1 ever since, so about 2.5 years-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's also received some awards from Century 21, the Master Ruby and the Master Diamond Award, which is about the top 3% of the industry, and he's also roughly been in the top 20 of Florida. Matt is a baller accomplisher when it comes to business and real estate, clearly. Matt's also a family man. He's been married for coming up on a decade.
Yep.
He's got two little ones at home, so we all know the demand that takes. He's been a big inspiration for me. I've learned a lot about how to approach situations, how to get things done from Matt as well. So he was a natural no-brainer to be the first to talk to about this. And of course, Matt is in our community because he is a team owner. So he's a sports team owner as well, the owner of the Palm Beach Breakers, along with a couple of others, including Danielle, Matt, Rachel, and Rich. Mm-hmm. So he's an operator. He's also been on the grid and actually played in a match. We'll talk about that. We dabbled. Yeah. So, huge player in our league, our sport, and we owe a lot to him as far as how far it's been developed. So, we want to get into a little bit about Matt's story. So, let's start there. Talk about the beginning. Where did you grow up? Tell us how you got to where you are today in a short little story format.
Gotcha. All right, so the origin of Matt Hornaday. So I was born in Detroit. I am the youngest of 5. I lived in Detroit for about 2 years, and we moved around a lot as a kid. So spent 2 years in Detroit. Then my mom actually ended up going to school, and she got recruited to go to the University of Iowa. So we went from a very diverse community to not so diverse Iowa City, Iowa. My mom was going back to get her PhD, and so while she was there, we were there for 7 years. And over the time period that we were in Iowa City, my family, between myself, my siblings, and my mom, were pretty much the diversity of the whole community there. So we spent our time there. My father wasn't really around. He lived in Detroit at that point in time. And it was really my mom taking care of all 5 of us while she was in school. And so when I turned 9, we moved from Iowa to Delaware, and I lived there for about 3 years, give or take. That was the first place that we moved to after my mom graduated got her PhD. And then from there, moved over to Maryland. I was in Maryland for my freshman year to graduating my senior year of high school. And then after that, my mom moved to Pennsylvania. I went away to University of Michigan for college. And since then, I've moved to Minnesota, and then now down here, officially home in Florida.
Okay. So let's talk about your professional career real quick. So you graduated from Michigan. Where did it go from there?
So that was interesting. So while I was in school, I graduated in 2008, and it was a crazy time back then because actually when I was graduating, a lot of jobs were being eliminated at that point in time.
It was a recession.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I got my job in October, and I was recruited to work for Best Buy at their corporate office in Minneapolis. So that's why I moved to Minnesota. I spent about 5 years there. Started off as an entry-level planner, got promoted, moved a couple positions throughout there. Ended up managing one of the biggest businesses that they have, which was laptops, before I left. And so after I left there, I was recruited to come down here to South Florida and work for Office Depot at their headquarters. There I was promoted to a managerial position and ended up running a team of inventory planners that allocated the product from our warehouses to the stores. And the dollars that I managed there was in the billions at one point in time.
Okay, so professional career, and you were managing billions at Office Depot,
Yep.
and then what made you change from Office Depot to real estate? Like, tell us about that whole transition.
Yeah, so a little bit about me is ever since I was a kid, I was running my own business. The first business that I had, I was managing mechanical pencils. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit in my heart, right? From there, like selling baseball cards, all of that stuff was just part of my MO. And so I always knew in the back of my mind that I was probably going to start my own business or run a company of some shape, right? Actually, what I ended up seeing is there was a wall in my corporate environment, right? And I was managing one of the biggest categories at my company, and constantly told that I was doing the right things and all of that, but for whatever reason wasn't getting to that next level, right? I had several promotions up to where I was at, but the next position where I felt like I should be, it wasn't panning out. And so I took it upon myself just to look at other opportunities. And really when a friend of mine at my previous company, she was actually the one that was going to get her real estate license, and I thought it would be a cool idea. And so I went and got mine, and then from there, took the class exam, took the state exam, and I met my broker. Mm-hmm. And even up until this time, I knew that I was probably going to leave my company and do something, but I still had no clue what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I just, was like, hey, we'll see what I could do with real estate on the side. I met my broker, and that was a game changer. Just the stuff that we were talking about and how to really be successful in this business got me to the point that after that conversation, I made the decision that I was going to quit my job, mm-hmm. And go full in on real estate. So going from a salaried position to a commission position, 100%.
So you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and this was in a way to express that, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before that, the other thing that we were doing is me and my mom were slinging candles and soap. So
you mentioned you're one of five, the youngest.
Yep.
And let's talk about, we're here to address the situation of race.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the challenges that you experienced in your childhood, or to the point where, you made some accomplishments in your career that were related to the issues that we deal with today?
For sure. I think the biggest thing when it comes down to when we talk about racism, well, one of the biggest things is understanding the levels of privilege, right? And, a lot of the conversation is obviously white privilege, and some people don't believe it exists. I can definitely tell you that all levels of privilege do exist, right? But in my particular case, you could see the different levels of privilege even in our family, right? And I think this is the part that people don't realize when it comes down to talking about privilege, right? So where your family is, even sometimes economically, can dictate a level of privilege. And in our particular case, so being the youngest of five, my mom was in school for the majority of the time that my older siblings were growing up, and I reaped the benefit of her graduating, having her first job, and really making more money than she had ever made in her life, right? So if we think about that, she was a full-time student, she was working, and had 5 kids that she had to take care of at the same time. So full-time student, full-time mother, full-time employee, right? And so as she was able to eliminate the full-time student, that created more opportunities for her, because obviously the job shifted into a better position for her. But then for me, that was when I was 9. So from the time that I was 9 to 18, I got the benefits of my mom not being in college and having a high-paying salary position working for the government, right? And so when I look at it from my personal situation and see the benefits and the opportunities that I had versus what some of my siblings had, like, there's no question that there's privilege there, right? And so, what I ended up reaping the benefits for was that my mom was able to help assist with more of my college than she would have been able to do for any of my other siblings before me, just because her financial position was completely different at that point in time. And, thankfully, and I'm extremely thankful for having that benefit, but in a situation where if she was still in college when I was trying to go to college, I have no clue how I would have been able to pay for everything, right? No clue whatsoever.
In your experience growing up, how did you see racism play a role in your and your peers around you's life, in what trajectory you took?
Okay, good question. So I was an athlete my whole life, right? And I think the big thing that I saw is that the athletic kids or the minority kids were consistently driven to focus on athletics, right? And they weren't. There was no, like, the amount of attention that was focused on athletics versus helping them and assisting them on academics was drastically different. All they wanted to do is make sure that, well, I can't say all they wanted to do, but what I saw was the focus was keep them on the field, right? It wasn't get them on the field, make sure they stay on the field, and make sure that they are getting a 3.5 GPA. It was, what's the minimum that's needed? Cool, we'll do that. What classes do they need to go into to make sure that they can keep their scores high? Cool, let's do that, right? And we saw that a lot, right?
So that was pressure from coaches mostly?
It varied. It was anybody that seemed to benefit from the overall ordeal. For me, like, I wasn't the best college athlete for sure. So I had no question but to stick to my academics. And so my degree was decided on back when I was 6 years old. I already knew what I was going to do. And I stuck with that, right? And thankfully I did, because like I said, I wasn't a great football player. So that wouldn't have worked out if I didn't have the degree to back me up there. But I think that it's just from what I've seen, it's a lot of the focus has been on keeping them on the field.
So you feel there was a disparity in as far as presenting to you realistic opportunity, whether it be academic or athletic, meaning you were pushed towards athletic without much thought or regard towards what you could do academically and ultimately what that meant for your future.
Yeah.
Mentally, to the point where you saw yourself going to college and having a great career and following that path.
So part of it was seeing my mom go through it, right? So knowing that she went to college and understanding the benefits that was going to have and had for her life gave me the visual of like, okay, I know for what I want to do long term, the path that I would need to take, right? And the one thing that I will say is, as a kid, like, I did have that insight of what I wanted to do later on, right? I also had a great environment that was around me and continued to encourage me to continue to move forward with that too. And so I think anybody that saw me as a kid had always talked about Matt's going to be in business doing something, right? Running some form of a company. But I also had, again, I would have people like my aunt who every time I would come to her house, I was trying to figure out a way to make money. And so we would negotiate a deal that I would take the trash out and I'd get $1. And so that worked for me, right? Just trying to work whatever business I possibly could. But it's like little things like that, and the people that cared about me and continuing to help assist me and push me forward and continue to elevate, that was huge, right? Because I think without that, without the right environment around me, maybe I wouldn't have had the confidence to know that I could do these things. And so with their support, it continued to push me to elevate, right? So I said, okay, I know that this is the goal at the end of the day. And I didn't know the path to get there 100% at that point in time. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew from there that there were certain aspects that I needed to take care of. So that's where education was extremely important. And I can't say that I was always great, right? But at the same time, when I was falling off the wagon, I did have my mom there to pull me back in. And we can go into it, dude. There was a year I was grounded for a whole school year because my grades weren't good enough. And that was the last year that my GPA was ever that low.
Did she take that approach with your siblings as well?
I think it was a little bit different for them, because you got to keep in mind, back when my siblings were my age at that time that I was grounded, my mom she had 3 jobs, right? And so the amount of time that she could focus on 5 kids at that point in time was drastically different than what she could do with 2 kids at that point in time. And so I definitely think it was different dynamics.
And you didn't have a dad, which obviously affected your mom's ability to pay, adequate attention to the kids and give them as much opportunity as you had. But on you, what effect did that have, and how did you deal with that?
So my dad lived in Detroit and wasn't really around. I could probably count on my 2 hands how often I saw my dad. So my mom was a big part in playing an advocate for making sure that we were doing all the things that we needed to do, obviously. The big thing for me was I didn't want to follow my dad's footsteps when I got older, right? So when I had my kids, I wanted to be there for them. I wanted to be involved. I wanted them to have everything that I didn't have, right? And it was interesting because, you have to also learn how to, at the tender age of 6, I was trying to learn how to be a father for when I turned older. I don't know. But like you have to learn how to play the male role, right? And I was extremely fortunate that throughout my life, I had several friends whose dads were there. And it was a complete family in the normal sense of having both parents and their kids there. And so I remember the first one was Mr. Mitchell, and it was my buddy Adam's dad, and me and Adam were friends, I believe, like second or third grade to when I left in 5th grade, and I would spend a ton of time with them, and just seeing how they interacted. I can't tell you how many nights I ate dinner at their house, and seeing the interaction at the dinner table was just me just soaking it up and like taking mental notes of, okay, I get it, I understand what I'm supposed to do. And then I continued that benefit, right? So from there, I moved to Delaware, and in Delaware, it was Mr. Russ, and Mr. Russ was my friend Russell's dad, and the exact same thing. But the transition was when I left Iowa, where I was the black population it felt like the state, but really it was mainly the city. And I moved to Delaware, and this was the most diverse area I'd ever lived in as, somebody that could actually remember what was going on. And so now I had this black role model that was showing me the way to be a father, which was awesome. And you learn drastically different things at that point in time too, right? There's certain things that even go on in the culture that I started to pick up over that time period. And then from there, after Delaware, I moved to Maryland, and when I moved to Maryland, one of my really good friends was Alan, so it was Mr. DeWitt was the role model there, and he's taught me things that I still use to this day. And he was, out of all the people, when we talk about a work ethic and hustling, this guy was hustling like 100%. He had his normal job that he worked Monday through Friday, and on the weekends he worked a second job, right? And I always respected him for that. And the way that we ended up actually spending even more time is that he brought my friend and myself in to work with him on the weekends. So the weekend job was a moving company, so we would pack people up that were moving. And so I got to spend a ton of time with my best friend, which was awesome. And in addition to that, I got to learn, right, going through this whole process with Mr. DeWitt. And that was phenomenal. And then after that, I transitioned, still in Delaware, but transitioned over to another mentor, which was Mr. Warren. And he was one of my really good friends, Justin's dad. And Mr. Warren has probably, we still talk to this day, and has played a major role in my life as well. And we could go back for stories upon stories about him, but he gave me my first job, as a freshman in college, and I even remember having the conversation about negotiating the salary. And I believe he asked me, what did I want to get paid? And the last job that I had before that was working at Burger King, and I was getting paid $7.10. And I thought that was great. Or maybe it was Roy Rogers. Sorry, it was Roy Rogers in Maryland. And I was getting paid $7.25. And I was like, yeah, $7 would be great. And he ended up giving me a lesson at that point in time. One, he didn't take advantage of me. He actually increased my salary above what I thought I wanted to get paid. And he explained to me why. And then on top of that, he explained to me about what we need to do in negotiating salary in general. And so I've taken that lesson on and tried to teach it to other people, even using it with my wife if we were ever negotiating anything on her side. Just to make sure that we're getting the most that we possibly can out of the situation. So
that father figure role model you found in other places, and some of the lessons you learned from those people, you still carry with you today as big impacts on how you've approached your life, essentially.
100%.
Which demonstrates how important that role is. So, what would you say to somebody that doesn't have a father figure in their life in the traditional sense? How did they overcome that? What did you do to, be able to be in that position to, because it goes both ways. Like, they had to want to play that role, but you also had to be receptive to that role as far as being able to want to learn those lessons. So what would you say to somebody in that situation?
So it's in this, at least in my particular situation, it was me understanding that I had, there was a gap there. There was something that was missing, and I wanted it to be filled. And kind of back to what we were talking about is that I thought about it from the future perspective of, being a great husband to my wife, and then being a great father to my children, and having that, like, thinking about that early on, made it so that I went out to seek those items, seek those people at the end of the day. But in situations where you may not have that father figure in that position, or you're missing one of those two parents, it worked out. Like, if you just look at some of your friends, and maybe your friends are in that same situation that you are, then you might have to go out and seek it elsewhere. So a really big thing that I did back in Minneapolis was I was actually part of Big Brother Big Sister, and that was huge. And I would say looking for something like that is obviously always beneficial, right? They're not always necessarily a father figure to you, but if that's what you're missing, or even a mother figure to you. But what they can be is they can be a mentor, and that's the whole purpose of the program. What I would always focus on is finding a mentor, somebody that can help guide you and keep you on the right path. And your parents are always, your parents will obviously try to do the best that they possibly can. But sometimes it does take somebody outside of your family to help guide you with where you need to go. And so it's looking for those opportunities and identifying them. But sometimes the kids, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And so sometimes you need that person who sees you and thinks that this is a great opportunity for you to take on, like, a mentor, right? And so it's hard because you would love if every kid knew just go get a mentor that fits what you're looking for, and then it's great. But people, sometimes you just don't even know where to start with that. Right. And so fortunately for me in that case, like, I wouldn't say that I didn't know I was actively looking for it, and it happened. But there are some great organizations out there that will definitely help with mentoring.
Yeah, the one thing that stuck out to me is this whole time you've been referencing you knew what you want. So when you were a kid, you decided you wanted to be a good dad. You wanted to be a good husband. That you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You wanted to run a business. And identifying those things as characteristics that you wanted when you grew up in life allowed it, the pieces to fall in place to fill in the gaps, as you said, about how to get there. Yeah. Right? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, and it all came from the lack of having, right? Everything that I eventually wanted, like, let's see, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Yeah, we had no money growing up. I'd go to school with holes in my shoes and holes in my pants before that was a cool thing, wanting to be a good husband, again, my father wasn't around. Being a good father, same thing, right? So it was the lack of having that let me realize, like, these are the things that I want long term.
Yeah, a lot of people have that lack of having and don't make that decision, or don't have the drive to get to that point. So I think it's interesting to note that you decided when you were a kid what you wanted, and you figured out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, it was that, plus you see it, like I had the opportunity of seeing it.
Right.
And so, seeing all my friends' families, like
you were exposed to what's possible. Yeah.
Like I was exposed to a CEO of a company, which is insane.
Right.
Not everybody has that opportunity.
Right.
And so yeah, it definitely, like, I knew what I wanted, but I also saw what I didn't have,
right,
and that helped me get there.
So, all right, well, let's get back to the topic of the challenges we have related to race in this country today.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a specific passion point or topic that you would want to talk about related to that?
I think the big thing for me is, when it comes down to it, is like making this world better for my kids, right? And our community in general. And everything that we can possibly do to set them up to be in a better position than I was, than my parents were, than my grandparents were, right? Like, as we go down that line of me to my mom to my grandparents and so on, like, it's just different forms of segregation, racism, slavery at some point if we go even farther back, right? And it's really getting them into a better position than I was when I was growing up, and even now, right? And so whatever we can do to possibly make that happen is what I feel like I'm here for.
Mm-hmm. What role do you see yourself playing in progress, in that?
Yeah, so where I see me is the same position that I was looking for when I was a kid, so being that mentor. Right? Bringing people into the fold. Now, I wish I could touch and help every single person, but as many people as I possibly can, that's my goal, right? And being able to give back that way, to show them, one, like, that they're, a positive role model. In addition to that, help these kids that might be missing out on something, or not have that person that has their back to help push them in the right direction. And I mean, and again, a big thing for me was, and I saw this back in high school and college, everywhere, but it was really even the focus of education, right? And I think that's huge, and not even necessarily that you have to go to college, but just that base level of education, getting through high school, and then knowing what you want to do after that, having a game plan set. Because there's also a ton of kids that go to college and have no clue what they want to do.
Right.
But I one of the things that I talked about a lot when I was in college is that, and even after that, I wasn't the best athlete on my high school team. I think the difference between even me and some of my high school teammates was understanding the importance of education. And if I could help a kid that was in their situation and get them to understand the benefit of their education, I mean, that would help them out tenfold, right? Because it creates so many additional opportunities for them. So that's kind of where I feel like my role is. One is helping to mentor and grow my community, but even educating the masses as much as we possibly can. So of course, like, I do a lot of it through real estate. And I think that's a huge thing that people should really be considering, because it's a huge opportunity to grow wealth. And if we get into the statistics and the numbers behind those that own real estate versus those that don't own real estate and what it does to them financially over time, I mean, it's a major missed opportunity. And that's another thing that in my community that needs to continue to grow, right? Is more homeowners than renters.
Yeah. So just to sum up basically what you said is, you feel like you owe a lot of where you are today to some of the people that have helped push you, help support you, help encourage you along the way, and you want to do the same thing for others in that role of mentorship and encourager type.
Exactly.
If somebody was interested in taking you on as a mentor in some way, even if it's a small role or whatever, how should they get a hold of you?
They can reach me on social media. All my social medias are under my name.
We'll link to that under the caption of this video.
usually would be the best way to reach me.
Okay.
If not, they can always email me. That's a little bit more of a difficult email address, but it's matthew@steinposner.com.
Okay.
But yeah, they can reach me either of those two ways, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, I'll put both of those in the caption below. Anything else as far as what people should do to follow up with you?
If we want to create some additional dialogue, same thing. I'm always open for that, right? I mean, I've had some good conversations with friends and family, especially with everything that's going on, and just explaining both sides of the story and exactly what we were talking about before about being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understanding, what's going on from their perspective and vice versa is vital right now. And so I'm always open to any dialogue on that.
Awesome. Well, I can't speak highly enough about you. I really appreciate your time in doing this even, and being such a big part of our league. And keep killing it, man.
Cool, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.